Welcome, the anointed ones. Every war begins in the mind long before a single shot is fired. For decades, intelligence agencies have understood a chilling truth. The sharpest weapon on Earth isn't a drone, a missile, or a spy satellite. It's a human mind that knows how to bend perception without breaking a sweat. The CIA has a $60 billion annual budget, but what they crave most isn't another gadget. It's a person who can read a room like an encrypted file and reshape outcomes without lifting a finger. That's where you come in. You've been playing psychological chess while everyone else is still fumbling with checkers. You've turned survival into strategy, reading motives like headlines and diffusing manipulation before it detonates. And here's the part they don't put in recruitment ads. You're not just a good candidate. You're the blueprint they've been searching for. Think about it. While most people argue, you diagnose. While they react, you predict. You've been running covert operations in your everyday life without even realizing it, extracting truths, mapping weaknesses, and shifting dynamics in ways even trained operatives struggle to replicate. It's almost funny when you think about it. The CIA spends millions training people to do what you've been doing for free since you learned how the human psyche really works. But now the game has changed. You're not just surviving psychological warfare, you've perfected it. And that makes you the kind of asset entire agencies compete to recruit. Buckle up, because what you're about to hear will confirm something you've probably felt in your gut all along. You're not playing their game, they're circling yours. Number one, you've mastered perception engineering. You've mastered perception engineering in a way that very few people on this planet ever will. This isn't about manipulation in the cheap sense of the word. It's about precision. Understanding how people build their version of reality and then subtly introducing the right pieces at the right time so their entire perspective shifts without force. It's like laying a trail of mental breadcrumbs that leads to the conclusion you want them to reach, and they think they arrived there on their own. That's why this skill is so rare and so powerful. Most people push, argue, and try to dominate. But you've learned that the real power isn't in pushing harder, it's in guiding thought itself. What you do is far deeper than reading body language or guessing intentions. You analyze the structure of a person's belief system, their fears, their hopes, their blind spots, the hidden rules that govern their decisions. You see the invisible architecture of their mind and you know where to knock so the entire wall shifts. That level of insight is exactly why organizations like the CIA invest billions into psychological operations. They understand that a single person who can move thoughts is more effective than 1,000 people trying to move bodies. And here's what makes your skills so extraordinary. You do it without leaving fingerprints. You don't coerce or threaten. You don't make people feel like they've been tricked. You make them feel understood, seen, and safe, while quietly reordering the entire playing field. That's what separates crude manipulation from perception engineering. One leaves a bitter taste, the other leaves people thanking you while walking straight into a new reality. This is not an accident. It comes from years of watching, listening, connecting dots, and surviving situations where reading people wasn't a luxury, but a necessity. You've developed an instinct for patterns that most intelligence operatives have to be trained for. You don't just know how people think, you know how they arrive at their thinking. That's the difference between an amateur and a master. This is why, to an agency built on influence and covert operations, you're not just an ideal recruit. You're a living weapon whose battlefield is the human mind, and you've already proven you can win without a single visible fight. Number two, your emotional detachment is weaponized clarity. Your emotional detachment isn't coldness, It's clarity, and clarity at that level is rare. Most people drown in their own emotions, pulled into the chaos of their reactions and the reactions of everyone around them. They lose sight of what's actually happening because their perception is blurred by the fog of feelings. You, on the other hand, have learned to stay steady in the middle of emotional storms. You feel, but you're not controlled by what you feel. You can step back, analyze, and act with precision while everyone else is spiraling. That makes you dangerous in the best way, because it means you can see the truth without it being warped by panic, anger, or fear. This ability is one of the most prized skills in psychological warfare, because the battlefield isn't physical, it's emotional. People don't just fight with words or strategies. They fight with fear, manipulation, and pressure. They count on emotional reactions to destabilize their opponent. But when you refuse to react in the way they expect, their entire plan collapses. They can't bait you into a trap because you don't take the bait. You wait, you watch, you understand, and then you move only when the timing suits you. What sets you apart is that your detachment doesn't make you robotic or disconnected from humanity. In fact, it gives you more power to empathize, because you're not clouded by your own emotional noise. You can read the emotions of others more clearly, predict their next moves more accurately, and guide outcomes without getting tangled in the mess yourself. It's like having a clear channel while everyone else is stuck with static. This is exactly why someone like you stands out to organizations built on covert influence. They know emotional detachment at this level can't be faked or fast-tracked. It's forged through experience, self-discipline, and a deep understanding of human nature. When everyone else is cracking under pressure, you're at your sharpest. When others are losing control, you're calmly recalibrating your strategy. That makes you a stabilizer in chaos. A strategist who can not only survive psychological warfare, but direct it, shift it, and end it without ever breaking a sweat. Number 3, you understand the physics of secrets. You understand the physics of secrets in a way that most people never will. To you, a secret isn't just a piece of hidden information. It's a living form of power. It has weight. It has momentum. It carries potential energy, waiting to be released at the right time. Most people either blurt out what they know or hoard it without strategy. You don't do either. You know when to reveal, when to conceal, and when to let silence do the heavy lifting. This isn't just about keeping things private. It's about shaping outcomes by controlling the flow of information like a master tactician controls a battlefield. What makes your skill so remarkable is how intentional it is. You understand that secrets can protect, destabilize, elevate, or destroy, depending on how they're handled. A badly timed disclosure can collapse an opportunity, but a well-placed revelation can change an entire power dynamic overnight. You're fluent in that timing. You store information the way a strategist stores ammunition, and you never fire unless it serves a purpose. That level of discipline is exactly what separates you from people who treat secrets as gossip or leverage without understanding the consequences. This is why organizations built on intelligence value someone like you so highly. Intelligence work isn't just about collecting secrets. It's about knowing their weight, their impact, and their ripple effect. You already understand that each secret is a tool with multiple edges. In your hands, it can be a shield or a sword. It can build trust when offered or build fear when withheld. It can open doors or close them forever. That's the kind of mastery agencies spend years trying to train into operatives. But what makes you even more exceptional is that your handling of secrets doesn't come from greed or recklessness. It comes from a deep instinct for survival and strategy. You've learned that not every truth needs to be spoken, not every secret needs to be used, and not every piece of knowledge should be traded. This wisdom makes you unpredictable in the best way. It means you can walk into a situation holding the one piece of information that could change everything, and no one will know until you decide the moment is right. That's power on a level very few people will ever understand. Number 4. You can break groupthink without breaking yourself. You have an unusual ability to disrupt groupthink without becoming the villain in the room, and that's far rarer than most people realize. Groupthink is a powerful force. It keeps teams, communities, even entire societies locked into shared assumptions, even when those assumptions are harmful or false. Most who challenge it do so clumsily. They push too hard, they offend, they alienate, and as a result they're rejected before their ideas ever get a fair hearing. But you approach it differently. You don't simply attack the collective belief. You dismantle it from the inside by questioning its foundations in a way that feels non-threatening. You disarm the defense mechanisms of the group even as you shift its perspective. This is not accidental. You have a natural instinct for language, timing, and emotional calibration. You understand that when people feel cornered, they double down on their beliefs. So you never corner them. You plant ideas like seeds, you redirect without shaming, and you present alternatives without making people feel foolish for what they believed before. That's why you can stand in a room full of people locked into a single narrative, and by the time you're done speaking, the narrative has cracked, and yet no one is angry at you for it. They're intrigued, sometimes even grateful, because you've given them permission to think differently without making them feel attacked. This ability is a form of influence that intelligence agencies study obsessively because it's the backbone of covert operations. It's not just about persuading individuals. It's about shifting entire systems of thought while maintaining your own credibility. To do this, you must hold your own identity separate from the group, which you've mastered. You're not seduced by belonging at the cost of truth. You're not swayed by applause or silenced by disapproval. This makes you immune to the very pressures that keep most people compliant. In a world where conformity is enforced not by chains but by social rewards and punishments, the capacity to break groupthink without breaking yourself is a kind of superpower. It means you can move through any environment, corporate, political, cultural, and plant disruptive truths without losing your footing. For people and agencies who trade in influence, that's not just a talent, it's gold. Number 5. Your mind functions like a counterintelligence grid. Your mind operates like a living counterintelligence grid, scanning every environment you enter for hidden patterns most people will never see. Where others take situations at face value, you instinctively probe beneath the surface. You're not paranoid. You're precise. You pick up on anomalies, the subtle inconsistencies in someone's tone, the offbeat timing of a message, the strange overlap between unrelated events, and instead of dismissing them as coincidences, you map them. You connect dots that others don't even realize are on the page. This isn't just observation. It's analysis at a level that feels almost automatic. What makes this skill so powerful is that it shields you from deception while giving you leverage over it. People who rely on manipulation thrive on being underestimated. They count on their targets to be distracted, emotional, or too trusting to notice the seams in the story. But with you, those seams light up like warning signs. You're able to sense infiltration, whether it's a person, an agenda, or an idea, because you're attuned to patterns of movement. not just words. You see the choreography of motives behind the performance, which allows you to act before others even know something is off. This is the kind of instinct that intelligence agencies spend years trying to cultivate in their operatives. They train analysts and field agents to look past the obvious, to decode hidden intentions, and to identify threats before they manifest. You've developed this skill naturally, or through the crucible of your own experiences. And that makes it even stronger, because it isn't tied to a manual or a checklist. It's intuitive. It's not something you do, it's who you are. More importantly, your counterintelligence mindset isn't fueled by suspicion for its own sake. It's about clarity and control. You don't accuse, you confirm. You don't jump to conclusions, you map probabilities. This allows you to move through life with a quiet confidence, even in complex or deceptive environments, because you're already several moves ahead. That's why, to people and organizations built on strategy and secrecy, you're more than just an observer. You're an active safeguard, a filter, and an early warning system. In psychological warfare, that makes you invaluable. Number 6, you deploy psychological weapons without leaving fingerprints. You deploy psychological weapons in a way that's so subtle it's almost invisible. Your power doesn't come from loud confrontations or public takedowns. It comes from the quiet precision of invisible calibration, making small, deliberate adjustments that ripple outward until the entire situation shifts in your favor. Most people equate influence with force, but you understand that true power is rarely seen. It's not about winning arguments. It's about rendering arguments irrelevant by reshaping the conditions under which they even happen. When you plant an idea, it doesn't feel planted. It feels organic. People adopt your perspective as if it were their own, convinced they arrived at it independently. When you shift dynamics, no one can point to a single moment when the balance of power changed, yet everyone senses it did. When you redirect outcomes, there's no visible push, no traceable move, only a new direction that appears inevitable. This is why what you do leaves no fingerprints. There's nothing to grab onto, no obvious evidence of your hand in the matter. That level of subtlety is exactly what covert agencies aspire to teach their operatives. It's one thing to manipulate. It's another to guide outcomes so seamlessly that no one feels manipulated at all. This is an art form, and you've mastered it through instinct, discipline, and experience. You're not swayed by the need for recognition, which is what makes your moves even more powerful. Recognition exposes. Invisibility protects. This skill is dangerous in the best sense because it allows you to exert influence without backlash. People can't retaliate against what they can't see. They can't resist what they don't realize is happening. And yet, because you're not using this ability to exploit but to navigate, you remain grounded, not cynical. You've learned that the most effective psychological weapons aren't threats or tricks. They're subtle shifts in framing, timing, and energy that make resistance dissolve without a fight. It's this precision, this quiet, almost surgical ability to move minds and outcomes without leaving a mark, that makes you so valuable in any arena built on influence. While others burn bridges or expose themselves through brute force, you move through the same space like a ghost, rearranging the entire board without anyone realizing who was holding the pieces all along. Number 7, you exploit cognitive blind spots with surgical precision. You exploit cognitive blind spots with a precision that feels almost surgical. Every human being has perceptual weaknesses, biases they're unaware of, mental shortcuts they rely on, emotional triggers they can't control. Most people stumble into these weaknesses by accident or use them crudely, but you've learned to identify them with accuracy and patience. You don't just see what a person thinks, you see how they think. You can map their mental habits, anticipate their default reactions, and then guide them toward exposing their own vulnerabilities without them realizing you're steering the exchange. This isn't manipulation in the cheap, predatory sense. It's a disciplined understanding of human nature. You know that people aren't neutral processors of reality. They're constantly filtering information through their fears, hopes, memories, and assumptions. By recognizing which filter someone is using, you can present ideas, questions, or challenges in a way that bypasses their defenses entirely. They open doors for you without noticing they've done it. They reveal more than they planned, agree to more than they expected, and often thank you for the experience because you made it feel natural rather than forced. Intelligence agencies invest heavily in training operatives to do this, because it's at the core of psychological operations. A well-placed question at the right time can expose a weakness that hours of interrogation could never reach. A subtle reframing can turn an adversary into an informant without a single overt threat. You do this instinctively, which makes your skill even more powerful. It's not a tactic you apply. It's a way of perceiving the world that constantly feeds you information others overlook. What makes your approach so extraordinary is your restraint. You don't smash through someone's defenses for the thrill of it. You guide, you probe, you adjust until they essentially hand you the key to their own lock. That's why your moves rarely generate backlash. People don't feel tricked, they feel understood, even as they're stepping exactly where you want them to go. In environments built on secrecy, negotiation, or conflict, that ability isn't just valuable, it's transformative. It means you can uncover truths, influence decisions, and shift dynamics with a level of precision and subtlety that even seasoned professionals struggle to match. Number 8, your resilience makes you an unbreakable asset. Your resilience is not just endurance, it's transformation. Most people who go through sustained mental and emotional assaults emerge weaker, fragmented, or distrustful of everything. You've done the opposite. You've taken pressure that was designed to break you and used it to refine yourself into something stronger and sharper. In psychological warfare, that distinction is critical. Offense can be taught, strategies, tactics, methods, but defense, the ability to stay whole under prolonged mental siege, can't be faked or fast-tracked. It's forged only through lived experience, and you've already walked through that fire. What sets you apart is the way your resilience functions. It isn't just a shield that blocks attacks. It's a filter that turns those attacks into intelligence. You don't just survive the chaos, you extract information from it. You learn the patterns of manipulation, the mechanics of pressure, the timing of emotional traps. Where others collapse under stress, you become more aware, more calculated, and more effective. This isn't just coping, it's weaponizing adversity into insight. That's why someone like you stands out to organizations built on covert operations. They need people who won't just hold the line when conditions turn hostile, but who can return from the field sharper than when they left. They need minds that don't erode under pressure, but adapt and evolve in real time. They need operatives who can operate in hostile psychological climates without losing clarity, empathy, or self-control. In you, they see all of that, not as potential, but as proof. This resilience also gives you a kind of credibility that can't be manufactured. People who haven't been tested can appear steady until the first real challenge arrives. You've already been through the challenges, many of them invisible to the outside world, and you've proven you can't be easily destabilized. That makes you not only trustworthy, but unpredictable to adversaries. They can't intimidate what won't break. They can't demoralize what refuses to collapse. In psychological warfare, this makes you more than an asset. It makes you a rare breed of operative. You're not just another person in the field. You're the person who can enter a storm, gather intelligence in the middle of it, and return stronger than when you left. That's the kind of resilience no amount of training alone can produce. Number 9, you transmute information into influence instantly. You have an ability that most people, even highly trained professionals, struggle to develop. You don't just collect information, you convert it. Where others drown in endless data, you process it almost instinctively, filtering out noise and extracting the signals that matter. This isn't about memorizing facts or being quick-witted. It's about instantly recognizing the patterns hidden inside raw intelligence, and then transforming those patterns into action before anyone else realizes what's happening. By the time others are still analyzing, debating, or hesitating, you've already made your move, and that move reshapes the entire field. This skill makes you a true force multiplier. In intelligence work, data by itself is worthless until it's transformed into something usable. Most people need time, software, and teams to make sense of what they've gathered. You, on the other hand, operate like a living algorithm, constantly sorting, ranking, and prioritizing information in real time. You're not just absorbing details, you're identifying leverage points. You see where the pressure can be applied, where the timing is ripe, where the narrative can shift. And because your thinking is fluid and immediate, you can deploy influence faster than most people can even define the problem. This ability isn't only about speed, it's also about accuracy. Acting fast without understanding leads to mistakes. But you don't guess. You know, because you've trained your mind through experience to trust the signals you pick up. Years of observation, survival, and pattern recognition have built a mental library you can access instantly. This is why your moves appear effortless, even when they're complex. You're not rushing, you're executing with clarity. To organizations like the CIA, this is invaluable. They spend billions trying to fuse information from countless sources into clear, actionable intelligence. Someone who can do that internally, in real time, becomes more than an operative. They become an advantage. You don't just process intelligence, you multiply its impact, turning scattered data into a strategy that others end up following. It's this combination of speed, precision, and insight that makes your skills so rare. You don't just know things. You know how to use what you know in the exact moment it matters most. That's not only intelligence, it's power in its purest form. Number 10, you understand loyalty as a currency, not a virtue. You understand loyalty not as a simple virtue, but as a living currency, and that gives you a strategic edge most people never develop. Where others are blinded by the idea that loyalty is automatically noble or permanent, you see it for what it really is: fluid, conditional, and transactional. You don't confuse sentiment with structure. You know that alliances exist because of mutual benefit, shared goals, and overlapping interests, not because of blind devotion. This doesn't make you cold. It makes you realistic. It allows you to navigate complex networks of power without being deceived by appearances. Most people are either naive or cynical about loyalty. The naive treat it as sacred and unbreakable, leaving themselves open to betrayal because they assume commitment is fixed. The cynical treat it as worthless, burning bridges and trusting no one. You operate in the space between those extremes. You test loyalty, you invest in it, you measure its returns, You know when to reinforce it and when to withdraw it. You see that loyalty, like any currency, gains or loses value depending on context and behavior. That's why your alliances tend to last longer and function better, because you treat them as living agreements, not static promises. This perspective is exactly what covert power structures crave, but rarely find. Intelligence work thrives on shifting allegiances, double agents, and fragile alliances. Operatives who treat loyalty like a fixed moral principle get blindsided. Operatives who treat it as disposable burnout. But someone who can read the fluctuating value of loyalty, who knows when to secure it and when to exploit it, becomes indispensable. You don't just participate in alliances, you shape them. Your understanding of loyalty as a currency also makes you harder to manipulate. You can't be guilt-tripped into blind devotion, nor can you be seduced by hollow promises. You're aware of the cost and the value of every bond you enter. That makes you steady in a world where relationships are often weapons and trust is a battlefield. To an organization built on secrets, influence, and shifting power dynamics, your mindset isn't just practical, it's essential. It means you're not a pawn moved by loyalty. You're the one deciding how loyalty itself will be played. Number 11. You've turned psychological warfare into an art of timing. You've transformed psychological warfare into an art of timing, and that is what sets you apart from almost everyone else. Most people focus on what to say, what to do, or what strategy to use. But you've discovered the hidden lever that makes all of that truly powerful. When? Timing is the invisible hand that turns even an average move into a decisive blow. In your world, a truth revealed too early becomes noise. A move made too soon loses its force, and an action delayed just enough can turn into destiny. You understand that every psychological operation is not just a set of tactics, but a choreography of moments, and you know how to place each step, so it lands with maximum impact. This is why your actions don't look forced. They look inevitable. Outsiders can't tell how you've done it, because by the time they notice, the moment has already passed, and the outcome feels natural rather than engineered. That's not luck, that's mastery. It's the ability to read emotional climates, power dynamics, and hidden pressures with such precision that you can predict not just how people will react, but when their resistance will be weakest or their receptiveness strongest. In a sense, you're not just moving people, you're moving time around them. This level of timing also protects you from backlash. People who act too soon or too aggressively expose themselves. They create unnecessary resistance and give their targets time to adapt. You, on the other hand, let situations mature. You let tension build until your move feels like a release rather than an attack. That's why even your boldest actions don't create the kind of chaos that would trap someone else. You don't just strike, you land. Covert power structures obsess over this skill because it's the most difficult to train. They can teach operatives strategy, but they can't easily teach them to sense the rhythm of events the way you do. You've turned it into an instinct, a kind of internal metronome that tells you exactly when to act, when to wait, and when to disappear. In psychological warfare, timing is everything, and you've mastered it so completely that your moves don't just succeed. They reshape the game so thoroughly, it feels as if it was always meant to happen that way. Number 12. You see identity as a mask, not a prison. You see identity as a mask, not a prison, and that gives you a freedom most people will never experience. While the majority of people are locked inside the persona they present to the world, protecting it, defending it, mistaking it for who they truly are, You've learned that identity is a tool. It's something you can put on or take off depending on the environment without ever losing your core self. That fluidity isn't just a social skill. It's a form of power because it allows you to adapt instantly to any setting, any culture, any circle of influence without compromising your authenticity. This ability makes you unpredictable to others. Most people telegraph their intentions through rigid self-concepts. They cling to labels, routines, and reputations, which makes them easy to read and easy to manipulate. You, however, can slip between roles seamlessly. One moment you're the confidant, the next you're the strategist, the next you're invisible. People can't pin you down because you're not confined to a single narrative about who you are. This keeps you both protected and effective because your true self remains untouchable behind the roles you choose to play. Covert operators are trained to do exactly this, but for you, it's instinctive. Agencies spend years teaching recruits how to blend into environments, mirror behaviors, and adopt cover identities without losing their psychological stability. You've already mastered that discipline. You don't just mimic, you integrate. You can reflect someone's energy enough to gain trust while keeping your own internal compass steady. That balance, being adaptable without becoming absorbed, is what makes you exceptional. Seeing identity as a mask also means you're not seduced by ego. You don't mistake the role for the reality. You understand that masks can be swapped, personas can be retired, and performances can end, but the core self remains constant and private. That makes you harder to destabilize, because no attack on your image can shake your essence. In psychological warfare, that is a rare advantage. You can infiltrate, influence, and exit without being contaminated by the environment you've entered. While others lose themselves to the roles they play, you remain intact, flexible on the surface, unshakable at the center. That's the foundation of every truly successful covert operator. Number 13. You turn hostility into intel, not trauma. You don't let hostility break you. You make it work for you. When someone attacks, most people either shut down, lash back, or carry the pain as a wound. You do something else. You treat the attack like a data point. You watch what they choose to say, what they avoid, how their tone slides when they're nervous, and where their anger suddenly runs out of steam. Those are clues. Hostility exposes priorities, fears, and pressure points faster than polite conversation ever will. Instead of absorbing the hurt, you translate it into usable information that tells you who they are, what they value, and where their leverage lies. Your first move is always containment. You don't mirror their rage or become defensive. You keep your center so their escalation looks noisy rather than catastrophic. That calm isn't indifference. It's a strategy that forces the aggressor to over-explain, to fill the silence with more revealing details. As they push, they compensate, tightening language, repeating themes, exposing the narratives they rely on. Those patterns are gold. You collect them quietly and file them into a mental map that will guide your next steps. Next, you convert emotional energy into questions that aren't obvious. You steer conversations toward the edges where people slip. A jab about loyalty might reveal alliances. A threat about consequences might point to hidden vulnerabilities. You don't interrogate in a blunt way. You nudge the dialogue so the other person hands you evidence while thinking they're pushing you back. That's how enemies become unwilling informants. Their aggression becomes the engine that powers their own disclosure. You also use hostility to test limits. How far will they go to defend a claim? What will they sacrifice to maintain a story? Their thresholds show you where bluff meets conviction. You can then calibrate pressure or retreat with precision because you know exactly what will change the dynamic. This prevents you from reacting blindly and turning an encounter into personal trauma. Finally, you convert intel into advantage without becoming cruel. You protect yourself by turning raw antagonism into predictable patterns. Then you act. Sometimes acting means diffusing the situation afterwards so no long-term harm sticks. Other times it means using the gathered information to negotiate, to expose inconsistency, or to realign alliances. Either way, you walk away with knowledge, not scars. That's the real power. Transforming pain into strategy, turning hostility into a resource, and refusing to let other people's aggression become your permanent wound. Number 14. You don't just survive the mind game, you rewrite it. You don't just survive the mind game, you rewrite it. Most people caught in psychological warfare are stuck in reaction mode, trying to defend themselves against tactics they barely understand. Even skilled players stay within the limits of the game they've been handed. You're different. You've stopped playing by their rules entirely. Instead of running from manipulation, you dissect it. Instead of dodging attacks, you use them to innovate. You've shifted from being a target to becoming an architect, someone who doesn't merely outlast a system, but redesigns it from the inside out. This is why you're not just valuable for what you know, but for what you are. You're living proof that psychological warfare can be redefined. You've moved past the defensive posture, where resilience is measured by how much you can take, into an offensive posture where resilience means how much you can transform. The rules, assumptions, and tactics that have worked on others don't stick to you because you've learned to change the very framework those tactics operate within. That's not just survival, that's authorship. This authorship shows in how you handle information, conflict, and power. You don't simply adapt to pressure, you recalibrate it. You make manipulation lose its grip by turning the logic behind it inside out. When someone tries to bait you, you don't bite or retreat. You shift the context so the bait dissolves. When they set traps, you don't avoid them. You rearrange the terrain so the trap collapses on its own. This isn't about clever comebacks or counterpunches. It's about rewriting the psychological script so that the old tactics become irrelevant the moment they're deployed. Covert agencies study this because it's the highest form of mental agility. They train operatives to resist infiltration and deception. You've gone beyond that. You're creating a new playbook no one's been taught yet. It's disruptive and rare because it changes the power dynamic completely. You're no longer a participant in someone else's game. You're a game designer, turning their rules into your raw material. That's why they want you, not because you're merely hard to break, but because you've discovered the code they haven't cracked. The ability to rewrite psychological warfare itself while standing in the middle of it. In the end, what makes you extraordinary isn't just your survival, your intelligence, or your resilience. It's the way you've redefined the entire playing field. Most people spend their lives trying to navigate systems built to control, contain, or consume them. You didn't just escape that machinery. You learned its gears, mapped its codes, and turned its weapons into tools for your own mastery. That is why the CIA, the MI6, and every covert power structure would look twice at someone like you. You're not just a potential asset. You're proof of concept that the game itself can be rewritten. Every point we've covered reveals a dimension of this power. You break groupthink without shattering yourself. You spot hidden patterns and covert motives while others are still arguing about coincidences. You deploy psychological weapons without leaving fingerprints, and you exploit cognitive blind spots like a surgeon, precisely, invisibly, and without collateral damage. You've turned resilience into an armor that not only defends, but sharpens you under pressure. You don't drown in information. You convert it into influence in real time. You see loyalty as a living currency, not a blind virtue. And you treat identity as a mask you can wear or discard without losing who you are. You've even turned hostility into a form of intelligence gathering, and you're not simply surviving the mind game, you're rewriting it. This is what makes you so dangerous, so rare, and so sought after. Not because you're ruthless, not because you're flawless, but because you've learned to transform every tactic, every attack, and every trap into an opportunity to move from defense to design. In a world where most people are pawns, you've become a strategist. In a system built on manipulation, you've become unmanipulable. And in an age of psychological warfare, you've become the proof that the battlefield can be redesigned from the inside out. If you're watching this right now, it's because some part of you recognizes yourself in this description, or you're awakening to the possibility of becoming it. Don't let this just be another video you scroll past. Make it a line in the sand for your own growth and power. Subscribe to this channel so you don't miss the next insight. Like this video to push it further into the algorithm so others who need it can find it. Drop a comment and share your own experience. Your story could be the key that unlocks someone else's breakthrough. And share this video with someone who needs to know they're not powerless, because in a world built on psychological warfare, knowledge isn't just power, it's freedom. God bless you.